planned on being. But hopefully, you guys are catching this and you guys are hearing me okay. And if you guys are catching this on the replay, would love to know where you are tuning in from, where you're catching this from, and if you've got a podcast, throw it in the comments there. Let's see if we can help grow each other's show together as well. So want to double check all the streams and make sure we're in all the right places. If you are catching this and you happen to be catching this on the live, let me know if things are coming in okay. We've had some technical and if you guys are catching this on the technical hiccups over the last little bit, and so hopefully the streaming gods smile upon us and let us carry on for today. Let's get that out of there. We don't need that audio, so sorry about that. We may have some visuals come in a little bit, but otherwise, I want to talk with you today about the three biggest reasons that business podcasts fail. And this has come up a number of times because we work with mostly podcasts that have some sort of business established with them. We don't do a whole lot in the true crime space. We don't do a lot in the fiction or the narrative. We don't even really work too much with what a lot of people would call like indie podcasters, or what I call like amateur podcasters, because a lot of times their core focus is building as big of an audience as possible, right? As large of an audience, as wide of an audience as possible, because that's how those types of podcasts monetize. The more people that listen, the more that you can charge, the more CPMs that you can charge, and the more money that you make. And so it makes sense, and especially, you know, with true crime stuff and with a lot of these narrative stuff, the real value is in the art. Now, for the businesses that, or the podcasts that we work with, usually there's some sort of business behind it. There's some sort of service behind it. There's some sort of product behind it. There's something behind it that all of a sudden the podcast brings to life. The podcast allows to come into personality, if you will. A long time ago, right, before we think back, you know, how business was always done. You know, I think about my very first job right out of high school was basically like what most people would call a door-to-door salesperson. It wasn't completely door-to-door, but I was walking into people's houses. I had like a little bag, a little briefcase. I would sit down at their table and I would sell stuff. And the goal was to like go in, hop in, and in 45 minutes to be able to get a credit card number with as large of an agreed amount as possible. I mean, there were times where we weren't even taking credit cards. We were taking, I mean, I was coming in a time where we were taking checks. Like literally there was checks or cash or money orders for these things. And the reason I say that is that that's what was required in order for businesses to thrive, in order for products to be sold. Is you had to have someone walk in somewhere and sell something. Now, of course, there was TV, and of course there was, you know, direct mail, and of course there were these other methods, but generally people had to be there in order to sell stuff. Now that evolved, right? Then people got websites and people got social media. And social media came along because it was really this opportunity to bring, once again, someone's personality, someone's expertise, their knowledge, and you could display it in a way that was a little more human. And in the same way that a lot of products would have famous celebrities or famous athletes doing their promotion for them on TV, well, now all of a sudden businesses could use social media to be able to get their brand, you know, not only get their brand, but get the personalities of the business, to get the personalities of the brands out there. And so this has kind of evolved, right? This has continued to evolve. And then podcasts came along. And podcasts are great because podcasts are a really wonderful opportunity for, once again, businesses to bring that unique personality. I don't know any other way to say it. To bring that unique human element that's usually only reserved for clients or only reserved for the team, and to all of a sudden highlight that to a lot of people, and to do it in a way that was, I don't want to say simple, because podcasting can be anything but simple, but to do it in a way that was accessible, and to do it in a way that essentially anybody could do. Because any business could set up a website, any business could get on social media, and similarly, any business could do a podcast. Now, does that mean that every business should do a podcast? No, but I do think that every business could do one, and it could benefit every business that's out there, especially service-based businesses. Service-based businesses can really benefit from having a podcast because services, a lot of times, are not commoditized, but the thing that separates them is the personality. A lot of times an accountant is an accountant. They're going to do accountant-like things. A lawyer is a lawyer. They're going to do a lawyer-like things. But what separates that accountant, what separates that lawyer from all the other accountants and all the other lawyers are their personality and their expertise. Maybe even their systems or the way they do those things, the way they do their accounting, the way that they approach, their litigation. So having a podcast is a really, really incredible tool to display that personality, to convey that humanness, and then also to share that expertise. So for services specifically, I think that it can go a really, really long way when it comes to helping a prospect to feel more comfortable and more confident doing business with you. A lot of service-based businesses, when we think about some companies, have sales cycles that are months long, right? 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 months long, 24 months long even sometimes, where someone is sitting in a pipeline and they're working on this deal for sometimes even years at a time. And the reason that they're doing that is because they've got to check some boxes, they've got to make sure that someone's ready, they've got to convince some decision makers, and so it's not always necessarily a lot of hoops that they have to jump through, but there are some significant hoops that they have to jump through. And so what a podcast can do is it can really shorten the amount of time that it takes in order to hit those benchmarks or to cross those, to check those boxes, to convince those people. And what's nice about it is that two things. Well, a couple of things come to mind. What's really great about a podcast is that it can be recorded once, and it can be utilized and leveraged over and over and over again. You can record one episode, and then you can chop it up and cut it up into a bunch of different pieces, but then also that one episode you recorded one time can be listened to dozens, hundreds, thousands even times, and now that one bit of recording is able to, if done the right way, can help move that many prospects a little bit further down the sales cycle, down the pipeline. The second thing that's really interesting about podcasts is that because it's on Spotify, because your podcast is on Apple, because it's on a podcast player and it's free and it's accessible to everybody, it seems that it's a little bit less scary to prospects. It's a little bit less salesy. Prospects approach listening to a podcast with their guard a little lower than they might approach a webinar or a sales call even, or a white paper. And I'm not sure why this happens, but because it's a podcast, it seems it's like this kind of Trojan horse of a sales tool that you can use, and I would encourage you to use it for your good, for good. Don't take advantage of people, but if you can create valuable content that also helps to solve some of your prospects' sales concerns, then why wouldn't you do that, right? And if you are providing a service that is genuinely helpful, then why wouldn't you do that? So those are some thoughts there. I'm gonna take a quick second and see here if we're live and if we're working and if anybody is here. Shout out to John. John Lacey is the one who has pushed me over the edge and got me streaming and helped me with some of the technical setup and helped me get over some of the technical hurdles that come along with streaming. He's also got an awesome LinkedIn newsletter and an awesome live streaming show that you can catch on here on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And I will also add that we are multi-streaming right now across the multiverse. We're streaming right now on YouTube and also on the platform formerly known as Twitter and also on Facebook. And so if you're not following me on any of those other platforms, go and catch me there, and you can see some other content drip out as well. Okay, so hopefully we've talked about some of the do's and the don'ts a little bit. We've given some context. I think another thing that's important for businesses to realize before in order for this whole thing to work, is they've got to have they've got to have the right foundation. And you'll see here, like up top, this way, I said that they've got to have the right premise. And when I say that the right premise, that goes further. So even before talking about the premise, one of the biggest things that they might not have is they might not have a good product market fit. They might not have a service that is actually, and not only a product market fit, even before that, but they might not have a problem market fit, and a problem product fit. Those are the things that we as podcast producers and podcast strategists and people on the podcast end, we can't always help with that. We work best when there's already a product, already a service, already something that's selling that people already enjoy and people already like, and now we just got to get it out to more people or make it easier for people to find out about it. We work great in those instances. Where I've found that it's really challenging and really hard is to launch a product and launch a service at the same time that you're launching a podcast. It's just a lot of moving targets. It's a lot of variables. There's a lot of things to try and get right. And so figure out one or the other first. I think that there is value in starting a podcast first and then building up an audience and then launching a product to that audience. I do think that there is value in figuring out what you're going to sell first, getting some revenue in the door, and dialing in that product market, that problem market fit, and then starting a show with that knowledge and around that base. Because the first step, right over here, the first step is having the right premise. Because too many people, too many businesses, they get into starting a show. Like I've seen, a number of shows just get into starting a podcast and they automatically think that, I'm just going to start an interview show. And they think, well, it's easy. Other people have done it. I can just hop on and have conversations with people. And I think that, sure, they might be right about all those things. It is easy. It is simple. They probably can hop on and have conversations with people. But it's not necessarily going to translate into clients. It's not necessarily going to translate or convert into dollars or revenue in their business. And the reason is because oftentimes in an interview, most of the time, the host gives all of the sales equity, all of the relationship equity, all of the expertise, if you will, and they give it away to the guest. And so the listener is so jazzed up and excited about everything that they heard, and they're so excited to run off and go to whatever the guest is offering. So having an interview show isn't always, right, by itself necessarily going to translate into more clients. So something to consider, right? What's going to be the right premise for you? Another thing to consider is, well, if you're not going to do an interview show, what's the alternative? Well, the alternative is a solo podcast, right? A solo podcast where you're able to share your expertise, or you're able to rant on a topic, or you're to share your systems or your mindset or your models. Those types of things are all possibilities for doing a solo show. You might do both. Another option is not necessarily an interview show, but hosting a panel, right? This is something that requires a little bit more coordination, but hosting a panel is something that you can do in order to really establish yourself as the person, right? As the expert. And that's really what we're trying to do with the show, is establish some sort of thought leadership, create some sort of connections with people that are, going to either partner with us or actually turn into clients, or actually, enable us to create some content that we can then distribute across the different types of social platforms that will help to establish us as a thought leader, or help us to connect us with other people in our industry and niche. So it all comes back to those same sorts of things. So having the premise of your show nailed down is going to be really, really valuable and important from the beginning. All right. So I'm going to take a quick second, see if there's any questions here. If you guys are catching this live or you're catching this on the replay, feel free to throw any questions down there, and also let us know what's your show. If you've got a podcast, or if you're thinking about starting a podcast, let us know what your idea is, and we'd love to support you in any way that we can. All right, so let's talk about the next part. The next part that I said is a common mistake that people make, right? No, right here is, I'm gonna get this right eventually, is not talking about the right topics. And this comes down to, the reason that this is so important is because topics and what your show and episode is about, and we could extend this to guests even, is what people are going to find your show based on. Outside of social media, outside of you doing another guest post or cross-promoting, outside of that, the way that they're going to find you is through search. And so having topics that are labeled, or episodes that are labeled correctly and that are easy to understand and have the right keywords in there, descriptions and summaries that have the right keywords, making sure that you're in the right even category is something that might spill over into this part. But the topics that you are talking about is going to attract and draw in the types of people that are listening. And so another kind of mistake, if you will, that a lot of creators make in general, not just podcasters, is talking about content that is what I would call like too close to their product or too close to their service, or they spend too much time talking about their product or talking about their service. And the reason that is that they're trying to sell. That's what they know, right? So they talk about their solutions, and they talk about their methods, and they talk about their processes and systems and mindsets and all that sort of stuff, which is helpful for the right type of person and helpful for the people who are in the right mindset and in the right place to be. The challenge is that it's only for those types of people. So if they are not ready for your solution, if they haven't decided that your solution is the answer to their problems, well, then they're not going to be as receptive, if receptive at all, to those sorts of things, to those ideas, to the topics. You could have the magic pill to fix their problems, but if they don't know that pill is actually going to fix it, like if they don't associate the pill with the problem, then they're not going to listen. So we've actually got to talk about the problem first. We've got to talk about the issues that are going on, the reasons that they are maybe struggling or having trouble. It's a big reason why this live stream was positioned and titled the way that it was, because we could talk about formats, show formats, and we can talk about how to find the right sorts of topics, and we can talk about that sort of stuff, but maybe people are interested in that, maybe they're not. But a lot of people who have a business podcast are worried about failing. And so if we talk about the reasons that people are failing, which is that they don't have the right premise or they're not talking about the right topics, well, then that is much more applicable to people, and perhaps they're more open to our solutions, whatever those may be. So those are just things to consider, and something to keep in mind as you are going through your podcasting journey. All right, I think we're gonna make this last one or this stream a little shorter than usual because I can rant on here for far too long, but we'll keep this one nice and tight. So the last one here is not promoting their services enough, and I just put out a newsletter about the different types of um, ads and the different types of spots that you can do. We talked about features on that one. We talked about mid rolls and end rolls and all these sorts of different ways that you can leverage um, that we can leverage our episodes. You've got a 45-minute episode. There's enough space in there for you to be able to promote your services and your business in a way that isn't slimy and or isn't spammy or isn't kind of sticky, if done the right way. So maybe we'll spend some time uh, going into all those, and maybe we'll do a live stream on that specifically. But what I would say is that most people, most businesses aren't promoting their business enough. They're not promoting their services enough, if at all. I mean, maybe they mention it a little bit, maybe they've got something in the show notes, but if you're going through all the time to produce an episode, your listeners should know that it's produced by you. And maybe even if it's not, they're not in the target market now, or maybe it's not them who's going to be in the target market, at least they know what you do. And so they might be able to recommend you to whoever it is that they would that would fit the ideal target. So appreciate you guys sticking with me here today. Today was a little shorter of a stream. We had some technical difficulties here on the onset, so I'm going to keep this one tight. But if you have any questions, throw those down there, and I'll come back and answer those. Otherwise, hope you're having an amazing end to this year, and looking forward to a much greater